This is Arjun Erigaisi, often called the Madman of chess, current number 5 in the world rankings. While everybody is complaining that chess is a draw and top grandmasters always keep making draws, Arjun goes for the win in every game, crazily risking it, going all in. That's why he earned his nickname. And in this video, I will show you one of the craziest games by Arjun. I will show you how he was balancing on the verge of defeat and how he created chances for himself, emerging on top of this chaos. Let's dive into this. So this game was played at round 2 at FIDE grandswiss, a very important tournament currently being held in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. The top 2 finishers in this event will qualify for the candidates to fight for the world chess crown, and Arjun is playing for the win in each game. Like, all his games are crazy, but I chose this one because this one, to me, it seemed like the craziest one. And if you look at the evil bar, the computer evaluation of the position, it keeps jumping. Arjun is winning, Arjun is losing, it is a draw, who will win? Like, wow, what the hell? And people are not computers, so Arjun's style is very, very difficult to play against because he's a great calculator, he has great intuition, he knows when to risk it, and he knows when his opponent is not likely to find like the best continuation, even though the position may be even losing for Arjun. He knows when to gamble. But do not try this at home. Let's dive into this. So the opponent of Arjun is Haik Martirosyan, an Armenian grandmaster, a very strong player, but lower rated than Arjun, 150 rating points lower rated. And many strong grandmasters complain that when they play people like 2600s, when 2700s play 2600s with black, very often the player with the white pieces just wants to make a draw, and it's admittedly not that difficult for a very strong player, a 2600 rated player, to make a draw if he really wants to. But that is not the case when you're playing Arjun. Arjun will play an opening that gives you the advantage, but he does not give you a straightforward path to the draw. So that's exactly what he does. He plays the King's Indian defense, by the way. One of my favorite openings for black. And here already we can see that white is not too ambitious. White goes for the g3, the fianchetto system. Usually it is known as a reliable way to disallow black from attacking white, because very often in the King's Indian, white goes here, creates a strong center, and in return black gets a huge counterplay and attack on the king side. And that's exactly like the dream scenario for Arjun. So because of this, Haik Martirosyan chooses the cagey approach with the fianchetto. So this is all theory. There are various moves here, various plans for c5, e5, knight c6, knight bd7. Arjun goes for the knight bd7 plan, and now e5, one of the main lines. h3 is useful prophylaxis against the knight jumping over here when the bishop goes here. After e4, very often white wants to put the bishop on e3, but then knight g4 would be inconvenient. That's why h3 is important. It's a book move. So it's still theory. Rook e8, very useful generally move. e4, takes, knight c5. Now black is putting a lot of pressure on e4. There are just 2 defenders and 3 attackers, so rook e1 adds another defender. h6 is useful because often white wants to pin this knight and jump on d5 with the knight, so h6 prevents that. Knight b3 offers a knight trade. If black takes, white will be able to take with the a-pawn and also open this file for the rook. But instead of trading, knight e6 is the move chosen by Arjun. He does not want trades, he wants to attack. If you want to attack, if you are attacking, it's usually a good rule of thumb to not trade the pieces. If you are being attacked, it is a good rule of thumb to try trading pieces. Trading pieces off to remove some firepower aiming at your king. So f4 is a good move, very logical in this position. Very often white wants to push f5 or e5, take more space, because in the King's Indian white is gaining more space, and it's the concession that black has to take in exchange for potential attacks. So what does Arjun do? What does the Madman do? He goes first a5. I think it's all still a theoretical move. a4, preventing a4, because a5 is, by the way, you should learn this, whenever your opponent's knight is on b3 or g3, a5 or h5, trying to go for a4 or h4 challenging the knight is usually a good idea, because the knight does not feel too comfortable with the a pawn advancing. And whenever white goes a4, now there is a hole on b4. Potentially black's knight can jump via, for example, c6 to b4, and this will be a nice outpost. So that's some positional subtlety. Okay, now black goes h5, pushing another pawn on the flank, and very much risking it. The plan is to push h4, but then white will be able to go g4 and storm black's position with white's pawns. But the plus side for Arjun is that there is potential to win this game. There is madness on the board, and that is the atmosphere where Arjun thrives. But his opponent is also very strong grandmaster, who also is not shying away from a fight. So bishop e3, h4, g4. And now that's what I told you, these pawns are marching, and actually the engine says it's +1. Big advantage for white already. But big risk that is, you know, without a big risk you cannot win a game at the top level with black. That's the rule of thumb, because everybody knows the main theoretical openings. In all of those lines, white enjoys a slight edge, maybe it's equal, but white is slightly pleasantly better at best. But usually it's all worked out to a draw. And if you want to play for a win with black, you need to take a riskier approach. You need to play some dubious line where you are much worse, but there is not obvious way for a draw. So g5. That's a move that, like, when I saw this during the broadcast, I was like, wow, what a move. So he's just giving up this pawn because the bishop is protecting it, the knight cannot take. But the idea in this position of going g5 is, first of all, you prevent g5 by your opponent, which is a nice idea. But also, this pawn will no longer guard the e5 square, and the e5 square will be a great square for the knight. So that's what Arjun does. He maneuvers the knight to e5. Knight d4, knight e5, and this is a great outpost for the knight at the cost of a pawn. Still, the engine says white is much better, +1. The engine says this is too risky. Knight f5. Now this knight may take this bishop, but also it's not even forced trading the knight for the bishop, because the knight is so powerful here. If one day black takes it, white can recapture with any pawn, and like it would be so scary for me to play this with black, even though I myself play the King's Indian, because like, who plays this? This is very, very unsafe. You get attacked, this knight is a monster, this rook can potentially join the action, the queen also will join the action, some g6, bishop h6, opening up lines. Who's attacking whom? I'm not really seeing what's the point of Arjun plan, but let's see. Knight takes c4. So taking the pawn and the bishop, potentially. This bishop needs to guard the pawn, it drops back. In such positions, it's not a good strategy usually to give up the dark squared bishop, so for the knight, so it drops back. Now c6, and now knight takes g7. It's also usually a good strategy to take this g7 bishop, because now black's king has no defenders. There is no one protecting the king, and it looks like it's not a happy place for the king. And during the game I was like, is Arjun risking it too much? Will he lose this game? Because look at his king, look at the engine evaluation, +1.6, so close to winning with precise play for white, because white has the two bishops advantage. Potentially the bishops can like terrorize this white king, and yeah, what is Arjun's plan here? e5, another great move by white, by the way, opening this bishop, these diagonals to attack, or this diagonal. So potentially the two bishops are such a force. So this pawn sacrifice is a good one. Also, it's opening up the file for the rook. But instead of taking, d5 is what Arjun does. b3, kicking the knight back, knight b6, and now king h1. King h1 is like a useful move very often, because this diagonal is weak and the king may get checked from it. So whenever you have moved your f-pawn, which is the case here. So the king can be checked from this diagonal. That's why it's best to hide it in the corner, but it's not the very precise move that the engine would have made. The engine would have gone rook a2, very nice maneuver, transferring the rook to f2 to then double the rooks and put pressure on f7. And yeah, white is dominating in this position, but you don't have to rush it. King h1 is also good, but it gives some time to black. Black maneuvers the knight back to d7, putting pressure over e5, but the idea is the e5 pawn is currently protected. The idea is, I think, to maneuver the knight over here. So this is the path that this knight took. It was on e5, before it was on d7, so that is the path. It goes... it was the g8 knight. It went to f6, then it went to d7, then it went to e5, then it took the pawn, then it went to b6, and now it's going to c5. And it's not the end of the journey, so Arjun is very eloquent with his knight maneuvers. Queen f3, so the idea is to put pressure on f7, and if the knight leaves this post, queen f6 will be possible as well. So the knight does leave the post. Rook b1 protects this pawn, and now b6. b6, the idea is to activate the bishop and maybe transfer it like this to the defense, because black's king is not feeling too well. The position is crazy. You can analyze it for hours. White had an advantage, but apparently like rook b1 was not a good move. After knight here, rook b1 protecting this pawn was not the best move. The best would be going rook f1, attacking this first of all, and then after queen e7, you don't even need to defend this pawn. You can go queen f2, which is somehow the best move in this position. And if I take, there is bishop a3. Wow, nice. And there is lots of pressure. Here, apparently, white is winning. But it's hard to see it. Humans are not engines, so rook b1 in this position was played, then b6 and b4. Takes. Bishop a6, trying to activate. Maybe knight d3 is potentially a threat, a fork. But also, in some variations, the bishop can go to d3 and join the action over there. So queen f6. This is a critical position in the game. Here Arjun made an inaccuracy. He could have taken, and this would have given him a better endgame. Because after takes, you go here. Apparently, maybe even here. Both moves are good according to the engine. And then you enjoy some advantage in the endgame, even though this pawn gets taken, but you get knight d3 in. And yeah, but it's hard to evaluate those positions, like to assess who's better. I don't know, like practically speaking, Arjun prefers playing with queens on, because then he can create more chaos on the board. So instead of trading, he went king g8 here. The position is around equal. Now some craziness will happen. Queen h6, logical move. Potentially white wants to push g6 and threaten some checkmating ideas. Knight d3. It's a fork. Two rooks are attacked, but white is winning. If white finds one of the craziest moves you will ever see on the chessboard, you will never guess the correct move. So white chose the second best move in this position. White went g6, and it's back to like equal according to the engine, or close to being equal. But the best move, the winning move, is rook d4. So your both rooks are attacked by the knight, and you move one of them but to another square that is also attacked, but just by another knight. So both rooks can be taken by both knights, and both of those moves lose. If I take this rook, you will see the idea of rook d4. So why did the rook move there in the first place? Because knight e4, now knight f6 with the checkmate is threatened. Black will have to give up the queen for the knight to stop the checkmate, or take the knight and be down material. Actually, black is up material in this position. Black has 2 rooks and a piece for a queen, but black gets checkmated after g6. It's a devastating attack, so material is not enough. For example, like the idea for white obviously is to checkmate like this. You can prevent it. Instead, after g6, you can, for example, take, but it's a check. And after this, what happened? Bishop h6. Bishop h6, and if I try to hold on, If I try to hold on, then bishop takes c4. And these threats are too much. Check, then check like this, or bishop g6 first, and yeah, the king will not survive. So that's the idea. If you take the e1 rook, knight e4 wins. That can be understood. But what if you take this rook? Then g6. The idea again is to go queen h7, king here, and queen f7 checkmate. And if I take here, queen here, check, here, and bishop g5. That's the idea. Bishop f6 will be a checkmate. You have to sacrifice the queen for this bishop. You can take, and then you can take another rook, and again, black has lots of material for the sacrificed queen. Black has like 2 rooks, a knight, and several pawns, but black is losing because there is another sacrifice, knight take d5. It's impossible to calculate this all, like in a practical game, it's some crazy engine lines. I'm just showing this to you because it's fun. Knight g2, knight here, and this will be a checkmate. And if you take here, then you take here, and this will be a checkmate very soon as well. So yeah, that's an impossible to calculate line, I think. So rook d4, no human would come up with such a move, I think. Maybe like if you know that there is some crazy move and you are given some time to calculate, you can find it, but not over the board with like 13 minutes on the clock. So g6 is a very logical move. I cannot blame Arjun's opponent. And that's exactly what Arjun does. He puts his opponents in situations where they have to find moves like rook d4. Like, wow, who finds this? So takes, rook f1. Obviously, white could have taken this with check, but then knight g7, and the engine says white is slightly better, but it's not obvious, like who's better, who's attacking whom. Both rooks are hanging again. This pawn is also hanging, and potentially white's king can get attacked as well. So yeah, it's hard to make moves here. So rook f1, he wants to put pressure like this to join the action with this rook. If you take the b4 rook, then you get mated, for example. Check like this, and if knight g7, then rook f7, I guess. Yeah, and you just get crushed. So white is playing very good chess, actually, very enterprising chess, I would say. Sacrificing material, like playing in Arjun's style. But if you play in Arjun's style against Arjun, you know, like you using you using my own spells against me, Potter. That's this kind of situation. So knight takes e5, takes the pawn and protects g6. Then rook d1. The problem is also that this bishop is attacking this rook, and somehow rook f6 is protected, rook f5 is protected, so all those squares on the f file are protected. So apparently rook f1 doesn't really work. Probably rook d1 would be more logical, because Martirosyan had to think here for some time after rook f1 knight e5, so that the rook is hanging, calculated some variations, and decided to go rook d1. So that's definitely not the most optimal move. And now the momentum is on black's side, and Arjun never lets go. He goes rook a7, very powerful move, preparing to join the action with this rook. Knight takes d5. White still tries to break through, sacrifices material. Kudos to Martirosyan, who is fighting like a beast. Takes. Now the queen is hanging, and the knight is hanging on e5, so queen b8. Defends the knight, but now bishop b2, and look at this position. Like, I would have preferred to play this with white, definitely. The two bishops, the crazy attack, queen is eyeing some checkmating squares potentially, and yes, you've sacrificed one piece, one knight, but at the cost of a great activity. All pieces of white are incredible, but black is Arjun Erigaisi, and Arjun just calmly plays rook h7, attacking the queen, and white has nothing. White has to exchange the queens. Bishop takes, rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, and white is a piece up. Yes, the engine says that you can draw this with white if you play precisely, but it's very hard with time trouble looming ahead. Rook d6 is still holding, because here you can take the b6 pawn. And apparently the engine says that after takes, bishop d3, a5, it's a draw. White can achieve a draw. But white is a piece down, and it's practically speaking hard to go for this. Instead, white decides to keep some material instead of trading the rooks. Instead, white goes g5 here. But this is a mistake. Now black is already close to winning. Rook h5, this pawn will most likely fall. This pawn is taken with check, but it's okay. King h7, retreats. Now rook takes g5. Now another pawn of black falls with check, but just king g8, and after rook b4, nice tactic by black, knight takes a4. If you take the knight, bishop b5 is a funny bishop fork, so you cannot take the knight. I can give you the rest of the line, for example, like this, and black has an exchange, and also this pawn. With this pawn, black is winning. So instead of this, after knight a4, instead of taking rook d6 is chosen by white, but it's already like hopeless. Bishop b5, h4, going for some counterplay, but after several more moves, white has exhausted the checks, and now it's black who's pressing. And after check and rook e2, white resigned because this bishop is pinned and it will be winned. So this is exactly the way Arjun plays, Arjun gambles, Arjun walks the rope, balancing delicately. And sometimes it happens, Arjun overpresses, but more often than not, people fall prey to such approach, even very strong grandmasters like Martirosyan. If you liked this video, please do drop a comment. Maybe you liked some other games from the Grand Swiss tournament and you want me to recap them as well. See you in the next one. Bye bye.